everybody, welcome back to the great state of Montana. This is the Carbine Cowboy. Hey, for those of you that didn't catch my previous video on the M1 Garand, here it is. This rifle was made by Springfield Armory, June of 1942. General Patton referred to the M1 carbine as the greatest battle implement ever devised. These things were invented by John Garand, or Garand as some people pronounce it, and it was adopted for military service in 1936. These rifles were used extensively in World War II, again in Korea, and then in Vietnam, and they were even used by a lot of National Guard and Reserve troops up until, I'd say, the early 1970s. If anybody was around back then, they remember Kent State in Ohio, the National Guardsmen there were using M1 Garands. The point of this video today is I wanted to do a little bit of talking about the M1 Garand. There has been a lot of resurgence in this rifle among collectors, gun enthusiasts, people like me that just like them for their history and like to shoot them. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to cover that most people don't know about these rifles. Number one, and first off, do not shoot modern hunting ammunition in these rifles. And let me explain why. Back when these rifles were developed, the military at the time did not use the standard loadings that we use today. Back in the day, this rifle fired a 30-06 cartridge with a 150 grain bullet, and it was fired at about 2,700 feet per second. The problem is if you fire a powder or a modern factory loading that is outside the specifications of this rifle, you will bend the operating rod severely, rendering the rifle useless. So what I try to tell people is today, if you shoot factory ammunition, they make no surplus or modern day mil spec loadings for this rifle just for the M1 Garand. So if you own one of these, just don't go down to XYZ store and buy a box of factory ammo right off the shelf, or you're going to destroy something you really wished you didn't. If you're a hand loader like myself, I hand load for these rifles. Powders that are acceptable for this rifle would fall in line with your Hotchkiss 4895, your IMR 4895, IMR 4064, powders like that. Those were all the Hotchkiss 4895 and the IMR 4895 were the powders that were predominantly used during World War II in this rifle. And they used several different bullet weights. They made a 150 grain full metal jacket. That was the preferred ammunition of World War II. But they also made 172 grain armor piercing and armor piercing incendiary. But you have to remember they also use those same .6 rounds in a lot of their light machine guns, the BAR 30 caliber Browning machine gun. But they also used them in the rifle, so those rounds were interchangeable. I would not suggest shooting armor piercing or armor piercing incendiaries in these bores. They'll wear them out rather quickly. The other thing, if you want to do a little research on an M1 Garand, the best book that I could recommend would be the M1 Garand by Bruce Canfield. He gives you quite a bit of information on these rifles, where how you can run the serial numbers on them, and it'll give you a date range of when they were made, that kind of thing. This rifle, like I said, was made by Springfield, June of 1942, according to the serial number on the rear here. The bolt, the trigger group, operating rod, and all of that are all World War II Springfield parts. The bolt is Springfield, according to the drawing numbers, 1943. Trigger group is Springfield, 1944. The op rod was replaced, but it was also replaced in 1945. The barrel on this rifle is also a mil-spec Springfield barrel, but it was replaced in 1966, and it's dated 1966. The reason for that is well, the original barrels would get wore out. You have to remember these rifles were used basically in 3 wars: World War II, Korea, Vietnam, all the way up to the 1970s, as I stated. So the barrels in these things did wear out. But this is a mil-spec Springfield barrel dated 1966. So I would have a tendency to believe that this rifle, before it ended its military service, was probably in the hands of a National Guard or Reserve unit for that reason. Now, they do make aftermarket barrels for these M1 Garands, made by Douglas and Krieger and stuff like that, but this one is mil-spec because it's stamped and dated. The M1 Garand is a very interesting rifle. You hear everybody talk about the M1 thumb. Well, these rifles fired an 8-round en-bloc clip. 8 rounds. But on the last round, it would eject the en-bloc clip, and it made a pinging noise. Well, the story goes that the Germans and all that would hear that last round fired, and they'd hear that ping, and they would know the guys were out of ammunition. Well, I don't know if I truly believe all that, because if it was one man engaging a couple of targets, maybe. But any of you that have been on a firing line or a gun range with a lot of shooting and all that going on, are you really going to be concentrating on listening for a metallic ping? Now, if you had a company or a platoon of men firing these rifles, you wouldn't be able to know which noise came from what rifle. So I somewhat question that little piece of history. But the M1 thumb is kind of interesting. The way they taught you to do these rifles, you take your hand, you hold it in front, you push down, and that's it. If you don't get your thumb out of the way, that spring will go shut on your bolt, or on your thumb, and it will smash it pretty good. It'll bruise your thumb. I've seen guys get them cut up. So, you really have to pay attention to what you're doing with them, or you'll have that happen. The M14 is the same way. It uses the same kind of system, just slightly modified. They make several different en-bloc clips for the M1 Garand. In some states, if you hunt with a semi-automatic rifle, they cannot hold more than 5 rounds. Well, here is a 5-round en-bloc clip for an M1 Garand. They make 8-round, 5-round, and a single round. But I understand the single rounds are only used by guys at your Camp Perry matches, CMP matches, that kind of thing. I never really had a use for one, so I never really bothered with them. But I do have a few 5-rounders. My state does not have a magazine capacity for an autoloader. Some states do. So if I wanted to hunt with this rifle, I would just use the standard GI 8-round en-bloc clips. But some states, like I said, you have to read your laws. They restrict you to 5, so I do have a few of these. But yeah, this rifle is quite interesting. I also have the bayonet that went for this rifle. This was made by AFH, has the U.S. flame bomb, and it also was dated 1942. It's kind of interesting. This is a 10-inch bayonet. They used to have some that were a little longer. They were 16-inch. But by World War II in Korea, most of them were the standard 10-inch. And some guys even cut them down a little bit shorter. Other than that, this is a 10-pound rifle. Recoil out of it is very mild, being gas operated and weighing 10 pounds. And I'm going to stick this little 5-round in-block clip in here, and I'm going to close this thing. There you go. Now I'm going to give you the ping. There you go. If any of you have any questions or comments on the M1 Garand, please post them below. I would try my best to answer them for you and give you what information I can. So from a very warm, sunny Montana day, this is the Carbine Cowboy saying, I'll see you next time.